Okay.
All right. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hi, my name is Randall Ellsworth. I'm going to be sharing with you a couple of different things about weapons handling and safety rules. I am a former Marine in the infantry, and I served as a corporal and a squad leader. And so today I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about what I learned as far as how to handle a weapon and do so safely. So in general, there's lots of different organizations that will give their different rules, but the ones that I learned pretty much summarize most of those rules into 4 or 5 simple ones. And the way that you can remember that, it's a mnemonic device, is treat, never, keep, keep. So if you just remember those 4 words, treat, never, keep, keep, and it's pretty easy to remember each of these 4 principles, as well as the 5th one that just kind of comes on naturally at the end. And I'll just list all those at once and then kind of go into each one. Treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Never point your weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot. Keep your finger straight and off the trigger until you're ready to fire, and keep the weapon on safe until you intend to fire. So, each of these rules are common sense. They're principles that apply equally to something like this rifle, to a common handheld pistol, to anything else really. Once you get into more complicated weapon systems, you may have additional safety rules, but for the average person, this is all you're ever going to really need to know. So treat every weapon as if it were loaded. A lot of people, most gun-related deaths actually are because of people not obeying this safety rule. They pull out their gun and just kind of wave it around, or they're playing games, or they leave it there accessible with bullets loaded so that their kids come and just pick it up and have no idea that that weapon is one hair's breadth away from discharging a round. That's probably the number one first thing that everybody should learn, is that any weapon, whether you know it's loaded or not, you just always assume that it's loaded. You always treat it like it's loaded, and you always give that weapon a healthy amount of respect. And that's probably the number one thing you can do to avoid just stupid injuries and stupid deaths. Just having that sense of respect. And that can apply in a lot of different ways, including the other weapon safety rules. The second of which is never point your weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot. So you've probably noticed that I've just kept my weapon pointed at the ground this whole time I've been talking. And that's for a reason. You never go walking around like this, like you see in the movies. That's just stupid. You never go waving it around like this either, because as you could just hear, what if that was a round in there and that just went off and hit some random person, or broke somebody's poor window, or just something like that, right? So that's the second really important rule. No jokes, no games. You just never point your weapon at anything unless you're fully intending to shoot it, whether it's a bad guy or a paper target. And what that also implies is that as you're moving around, if you need to transport the weapon without it being in some kind of a case, like the one that I have here, then that means that you're always walking around with it, either with a sling pointed safely down to the ground or high to the sky. And as you move it from those different positions, you're always conscious of where it's pointing, so that you're not swinging it around and pointing it at someone. It'll make your hunting buddy really nervous. Third rule, keep your finger straight off the trigger until you're ready to fire. So that's just one added layer of protection. You'll notice that each of these rules usually has to do with keeping additional kind of layers of fail-safes, right? So to prevent accidental discharge. What this does is it prevents you from, you trip over a little rock or something like that. You're not going to trip and grab your rifle and squeeze the trigger and shoot somebody. It just should be that reflex that your finger is never going to be on that trigger unless you're about to shoot somebody or a target. And in the same vein, keep the weapon on safe until you intend to fire. Just same thing. In this weapon right here, you'll see that there's a safety. Same with most every other weapon that you'll ever use commercially, or even in the field. And what that does is it prevents it when it's jostling around on your back on your sling, or as you're tripping over stuff or whatever. That's going to prevent it from accidentally shooting yourself in the foot. Just read a story recently about a cop who was in an elevator trying to make an impression on someone in there. He was off duty. I don't think the person was even really doing anything super crazy, but he pulls out his pistol because he's just trying to make an impression. And because he had his finger straight on the trigger, and he didn't happen to have his weapon on safe, he accidentally shot the wall of the elevator. It bounced back and hit him in the stomach. He bled out, and I think he didn't die, but sure was hurting real bad. So each of those 4 safety rules are aimed at protecting yourself and other people from you, and just generally revolve around treating the weapon with respect for what it can do, either for good or for bad. And the 5th and final rule is know your target when lies beyond. It's just important to know that even if I shoot this weapon at a bad guy right here, it's probably going to go through him, the wall, and through whoever else is on the other side of that wall. If I'm shooting out in the open, that's why it's so important to stake out, okay, where am I shooting my targets? What's behind them? Bullets go a long way, and it's very possible to hit somebody a long ways away that you can't even see on accident. There have even been cases where people are shooting their weapons up into the air, and those rounds come down and in some cases have hurt people, just falling down from the sky like that. So again, a healthy amount of respect for the weapon and for what it can do is essential. So just to sum up, treat, never keep, keep. Treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Never point your weapon at anything you do not intend to shoot. Keep your finger straight off the trigger until you're ready to fire, and keep the weapon on safe until you intend to fire. Follow those 4 principles and all the common sense different scenarios that you'll come across, as long as you kind of think to yourself, okay, like, should I really be doing this? You think about those 4 things, you'll probably be able to figure out for yourself. And that's what I have to share.